Gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode 167 of DadAwesome, and this week we've got David Horsager joining us for a second round. I had him on 7 months ago. It was like, man, his book just dropped yesterday, so it dropped at the end of March. Today is April Fool's Day, April 1st, and happy April 1st, by the way. Have some fun with your kids today. But I had to have David Horsager back on. His kids are ages 12 through 18. There are so many transferable principles between being a trusted leader and being a trusted dad, because dads are leaders. So I'm excited that you're here today. Let's jump right into my conversation, episode 167 with David Horsager. Today, I have David Horsager joining me for, it's actually our round 2. So 8 months ago, last summer, we had you on for round 1, but we're getting you back here for round 2. So welcome to DadAwesome.
I'm so excited to be here, and I think I made a commitment. My assistant reminded me, you said you're going on a 100-mile bike ride. Do I need to put things in your calendar so that, you get training days?
That's amazing that you brought it up, because I actually just, if you're watching on YouTube, I usually have my bike sitting behind me I took it out for this one since we're talking DadAwesome, less fathers for the fatherless. But yes, you're invited. August 28th, we're doing the 100-mile Twin Cities, the 100-mile ride. We've actually locked in 5 other cities in this mission of inspiring dads to do something hard for the fatherless. So thanks for your commitment on the air now, in the podcast world.
Out loud, public.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And one thing I wanted to say as we get started here, David, is there are friends and mentors that speak not a mass quantity of hours, but we've had 3 or 4 conversations in the last year that do change the trajectory of, I believe it can happen in our dad life and in our leadership and for ministries. Those conversations, it's a deposit that actually pays itself back many, many times over. And you've been one of those leaders for me that has inspired and encouraged and turned some dials. You've also spoken some truth of like, no, you need to think about this, and with some passion behind it. So I wanted to just say thank you for the impact you've made on the ministry of DadAwesome.
Thank you. It's all in love, but I get paid to tell the truth.
That's
too,
right.
But I hope I do it when I'm not, when I'm not paid too. So I whether it's in the boardroom or in the accountability group or friendship, that speaks to something for dads. I mean, just jumping right in here, like I think I've got my accountability weekend coming up here very soon, in a week or so, and it's like that's one thing. That group, we've sharpened each other, and but the reason is there's truth in genuine love. Like, we care so much about each other, and yet we're willing to say, how you doing as a dad? How you doing as a husband? How you doing as a leader of a company? And we're going through something right now. If you've heard of it, Praxis Labs, but how do you be redemptive leaders or redemptive entrepreneurs when you have power over people? How do you make sure you're paying them well, loving them, creating a space where people can be their best and all God wants them to be. Wow. So anyway.
That's amazing. And I'll link Praxis Labs, some of their resources in the show notes, because that's an amazing movement of resourcing that they're doing for dads and leaders. I wanted to start here just to catch up, since we did chat, and I haven't had many guests on twice in the matter of 7 months. But just as a catch up, anything new that you've realized as a dad, as a leader, on the home front specifically, though, that a new learning that has affected your dad life, your priorities, the disciplines that you bring to loving your kids well, any new insights that you've learned?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I went from flying 100 times a year or whatever it was to being home in a pandemic, and I think people would say, I think my wife would say, it was active, but it's different in how we do it. I think there are lots of things. There's so many things I'm still need to get better at, man. Patience, and I think in some ways I've been so intentional that it can be too much in certain ways. But I think one little idea that Lisa and I have that is stuck and starting to become a practice is something Lisa says, my wife says often, is see the good, say the good, share the good. And I think I might have mentioned this last time. Did I?
I don't think so. No,
I don't think. Yeah, it's fresh. So basically, I remember when she spoke at her grandma's funeral years ago. She said, "This grandma, she believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Everybody needs someone to believe in them, especially if they don't believe in themselves. And I think there's this thing, for me, I probably, a lot of my, if I have success, at least natural success, part of it is the ability to critique and see the problem. And in the boardroom, I'm asked to find the biggest problem of a multi-billion-dollar company, right? Or even when Lisa and I started in ministry, we were doing, if you think back over 20 years ago, we were actually doing performance. And performance, you have to critique it to get better. And I remember someone told me something about, I could say his name, but I won't, but a very famous magician. And he's amazing on stage. And nobody ever wants to be around him. He's such a critical, down person. And he's just critical in everything. And I think sometimes our criticalness that actually can help us in a way, not that we don't need to be encouraging, and definitely I want an encouraging environment in my company, but criticalness can so quickly to seep in. I think especially as dads, because we want to solve problems, want to solve that situation, want to solve that challenge. And so I think one thing I keep having to learn, but I think I've gotten to another level of, hopefully a little bit, for a time at least, of see the good, say the good, share the good. So instead of seeing the challenge, seeing the good there, seeing the good in that kid, seeing the good that they are doing, even if they still have a messy room, even if they still aren't doing as well in their grades, even if they made this other mistake, and in my case, had tailgated someone and rammed into the car in front of them and told the front end, or whatever it is. It's like there's a see the good piece here, and if we can see the good and say the good and share that good, there's a theory in basically in corporate psychology that is appreciative inquiry, and it basically, the whole study is around what's the best of look like? We've got all these problems, we know that, but let's look at when did we serve a client really well? When did we do this thing really well? And let's focus on that. Now, how can we replicate that? And I think that's what we're looking for and see the good of a kid or a marriage or anything, is like, when we've really shown love? When have we really, when we follow Jesus like this, when we do that, what's that look like, and replicating that, and maybe a little more of that and a little less critique.
Yeah, that immediately my mind jumped to Valentine's Day. We did a little special time with my little girls, and my 4-year-old. We went around, and each person, the person on their left, we said, I love you because, and I just found myself rattling off specific reasons of that why I love her, and her eyes got bigger and bigger and shinier and shinier. And it applies to our families, but also our coworkers, our neighbors. Like, by seeing and saying the good, we all just kind of sit up a little taller, and we all shine a little more. And so I love that principle. It actually ties into where I wanted to launch to next, which is around the principle of reflection. How often we can survive the dad life, or we can just move into the next chapter and be like, that was hard, I'm moving onward. and actually, the year 2020, the reason that you spent some intentional time reflecting is because it was a crisis in so many ways of leadership. It was crisis. If you reflected, you actually quoted somebody else, I forget, you said, don't waste the opportunity in a crisis. It was one of your mentors or somebody you quoted. But the idea of, dads, let's not waste the opportunities, the experiences we have. Let's actually reflect on, what did I learn, so I can add that to the next chapter. And first, before we go into the specifics, I want to dive into a few points. You had 16 points. I'll hit like 3 or 4 of them. But why is reflection important for dads?
Well, I think reflection is important for anyone. And, when I'm our company, at least what we do is try to, change cultures of organizations. And so we think a lot about learning and development that actually transforms. There was a great article written in Harvard Business Review on why leadership training fails and what to do about it. And we think of these 7 components that we have to have for transformation to happen. And one of those is reflection, even in that way. And how do I, if I just keep busting through, I'm going to add this new tool, I'm going to do this. I pause, and reflection allows space for God to speak about that to us. It allows space for me to think about this question. What is it? That's a truth, okay, but what does that mean for me? How does that apply to my kids? How does that apply to my marriage? How does that apply to my leadership? Because we often, even in learning and development, it's like, oh, that's true, that's a good idea. Yeah, don't waste a good crisis. What does that mean? Right. That one quote. What does that mean to not waste a good? You mean there's opportunity in it? Oh, what is that? And pausing and reflecting, because a big part of learning happens in the fast-paced parts, but a lot of learning happens in the pause and reflecting. What's that mean to me? What's God saying here? What should I do about it? And that's why you see, I don't know if you can count how many journals I have over the years, but bookshelves of journals. Those are the things I'll get rid of even good books and pass them on. But I've got all these journals of pause, write that down, think about it a second, and something great happens. You know, I went away to a hermitage one time and just in that time of reflection, had this kind of epiphany to go to grad school. I didn't need to. I didn't think there was any reason to help my company at the time. We were doing well, but I thought, no, I'm supposed to do this. And that was monumental to starting the trust research 20 years ago that led to best-selling books and a whole shift of thinking about our place in the world and what we're supposed to do. One time when I stopped long enough to listen to God, reflect, journal, and,
Well, and I'm going to link the video that has all 16 of them, but let's jump right to the one you just went for, which is sabbatical rest. And it could be a 1 day, it could be a 1 month. I know you were able to take a little time in July this last summer to like reorient and then lead well the second half of the year. But why is rest, and just go a little further into what your experience at that hermitage or just other rhythms of pause and then take new ground.
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, this is difficult for me. I'm very driven naturally. Right. I am driven. And so it's work for me to make sure I have these set up even in daily life and in annually and so on. In the July, I actually gave everybody went to halftime on the company. I took some specific time to just rethink where we headed, where we go, and that's good. I was actually planning on this year before COVID and everything, planning on an actual sabbatical, 3-month sabbatical, where I was kind of writing and rejuvenating. I mean, I'm jumping all over my mind to answer that question. I'm just thinking of, pastors and teachers that don't rejuvenate and they're just not fresh. I mean, I'm speaking, I'm training. I can tell if I start to not get fresh, it's like, oh, that's the same. It might be truth, but it just doesn't carry the freshness unless we pause and rejuvenate. And that's the burnout of many leaders, pastors, maybe even dads, So a rhythm, some of the rhythms for me, there is a daily rhythm for Elise and I. Get up, pray together before the kids are awake. This is right now. Things change at different times in life, right? The weekends, I rarely work at all as far as business work, even though I might be thinking about certain things. But what I like, I will just mention this because this has been really valuable to me, is yearly rhythms. So annually, like going to that hermitage here in Minneapolis, it's Pachaman Terrace is where I am the most. Annually, my wife too. There's two mastermind retreats I do. That's more of a rhythm of pause on our company. But out of that, amazing ideas have happened. Now because we paused and got away, I thought, I don't have time for this. I don't have time, but boom, we do it. And we fly to a different part of the country and this group meets and we all are running companies and that has been invaluable. But I'll tell you the key annual one is my accountability group now for, I don't know, I think it's 28 years or something. It's in 2 weekends from now. And that group where we actually do talk about how are you doing as a dad? How are you living out your faith? How are you doing as a husband? And we can't talk about anybody else. We can, my wife should do that better. No, all you can have, what can you do better? And that pause, and we each share through a series of questions for a few hours, actually, each of the four of us. We also pause and think, okay, what are kind of some goals for next year? And that pause transformation has happened because of that pause in the cycle. Yeah. So there's many other pauses we can talk about.
Well, that's helpful, and it ties into health and home. As a leader who, again, you get to meet in boardrooms and through digital meetings with these leaders of mega companies, bigger than we can ever imagine. But the principles of health and home, I just know this is deep within you. Of, hey, if we don't take care of our health, physical bodies, and if we don't take care of the home life, our relationships, our marriages, our kids, the multiplying negative impact in the other spheres, I just know is so huge. One of the, is it an acronym when every letter stands for something? Is it an acronym? I believe that's what it's called. Yep. Seeds. Would you talk about seeds? I've got it written down in case it's been a little bit since you shared it last, but starts with sleep.
Oh, I know it. I know it. I know it. Let me say something before that.
Yeah, sure.
Also, the people in my company know I have, I have a chief staff and executive assistant now, and this team. I didn't always have it that way. People taking stuff off me or whatever. Some of the work, still more than I can imagine to do. But I have 5 things we have no more than 5 key responsibilities. And I have 5 key responsibilities as a leader now. These are the things we're at our best if I'm only doing these. I'm not doing that, not doing that, not doing that. You're doing, somebody else doing that. One of my 5 is healthy heart and home.
Wow.
So my team knows when I fly back, if I don't come in, if I'm going to work out or going to see my kids or going to, because I'm God's, that is part of my job for this company, is healthy heart and home. So that's just an interesting side note that everybody knows.
Yeah, it's helpful.
And that being out loud about that, where you can, not everybody can do that. I can't go work for that company and say, well, mine's hard, but I mean, I'm working, there's other weeks I'm 70 hours a week or whatever. So, so seeds, I talk about seeds. Seeds came out of, this idea. Lisa and I were talking about, what is it about people that actually are able to transform something? They're they'll go to, let's say, hear a speaker and they, oh, I'm so excited, and nothing changes, right? And everybody seems to want to change a habit, and almost nobody does. I can ask an audience, how many of you have wanted to change a habit? Just raise your hand. Everybody's in. Then I'll say, how many of you have ever actually in your life, you want to all the time, but have ever actually changed a habit that's significant? Lost 25 or more pounds, got, smoking, stopped smoking, whatever it is, like a real habit. Like 6%. It's ridiculous. Everybody wants to, but nobody does. How do you do it? So Lisa and I were talking about this, and we just kind of started to notice, and this one isn't part of my research base, okay? This is,
sure.
But I would say it is. Experiential research sometimes is best, but anyway, it seemed like they had their seeds planted and cultivated. And the seed stands for, the first S is sleep. They got enough sleep. They're getting sleep. And, we used to be arrogant. Probably, I used to be even 20 years old. Oh, I only need 5 hours of sleep. And, you got people saying, oh, I didn't sleep for 7 weeks. I mean, people are like, I don't need sleep. Yeah, it turns out we do. My midsection is a different size when I sleep. My anger level, everything changes with sleep, right? Yeah. We need it. And it's, the first E is exercise. Moving some, not that you have to do everything. You can see me. I'm at my standing desk in the office today. I never sit, almost never sit. But right behind me, I have a tread desk where I can walk at 2 miles an hour or whatever. But there are other ways to start moving. I'm not going to start running a marathon like my wife, although I did commit to a 100-mile bike ride. I'm going to, I've found some ways that I can move more and exercise. And now I even like it and do some triathlons. But when I started, at least the weight loss thing way back, I wasn't into it until I got healthy. Some people think, oh, you got healthy by doing triathlons. No, I got healthy, and then all of a sudden that became enjoyable. Yeah. So that exercise, the third letter, the next E in seeds is eat right. And eat right's a big deal. I mean, I had a doctor say to me, David, do you want to drive a junker or a Ferrari? Because we put different fuel in a Ferrari. And if you put that in a Ferrari, you got to put different stuff in. So I had to learn some things, and it's different than people think. But I make sure I eat 4 or 5 green vegetables a day now. I do some very different things. Not that I still don't like some ice cream, but So another guy, a doctor said, he said, you can't outrun a cheeseburger. And this is kind of fun for us to think about, because he's like, well, a cheeseburger meal at the time was like 1,500 calories with the biggest fries, the biggest, all this stuff. Yeah. It was like the amount I was supposed to have in a day almost, one cheeseburger meal. So it's like, you get on a treadmill for an hour or a half hour, whatever, maybe 500 calories. You can't outrun that. You've got to, So the D is drink water. Turns out we're made of it. Most people in America aren't drinking enough water.
I have a visual for you on this one. If you're on YouTube, I got a visual for this part.
All right, let's see it.
This is it. You've inspired me. Last time we were on, I was drinking coffee and you gave me a hard time. So I was like, I got to get my water.
I drink some coffee too. But thankfully, I went from putting stuff in coffee to black, because that's what 15 years ago killed me, with what you put in it, right? The final S is source of strength. And that is, for those of us that are believers, that's a source of strength that God. It's like, people, I've sat next to CEOs and senior leaders, and they're scared to death they're going to be found out. They have a pit. I have one, I remember still in the boardroom, he's like, I have a pit in my stomach every day for this company that I'm not capable. I don't know what I'm, it's like, it's a multi-billion-dollar organization. And I've sat next to the head of a pro sports team that's just plain alone. And I just, what I found is people that are leading well actually have a source of strength beyond themselves, and they're better at work. If people are getting all their life from work, they're worse at work. So
it sounds like it ties faith, it ties source of strength. Friends would fall into that as well.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Family, friends. And and faith, I would put those as kind of that. If you find, you know, I don't, in corporate work, I'm not making people find it in certain places, but
Right.
what we know is if they just get it from work, they're not as good at work.
Yeah, yeah. That's really helpful. Maybe the last one from this category of reflections and how we can leverage again crisis and reflect and use it as a springboard forward is just around inputs always lead to outputs. And I think as a dad, remembering that are we doing these inputs? Actually, seeds would be an example of that. These
Yeah,
are inputs,
totally.
and you're not seeing the impact for a little while later. But can you think of other dad life examples of just reminding us that inputs, there's going to be an output. Just keep going.
Let me clarify this truth, by the way, because
Yeah.
this is every science says this. Business, we say input leads to output. First law of thermodynamics, the great German physicist found energy goes in is exactly the same as energy comes out. You know, physiologically, eat a bad bowl of chili, you got a bad output, right? So input, output. But farming or theology, you reap what you sow. Galatians, you reap what you sow. You know, so you basic psychology, another science, same thing. Thoughts that go in lead to desires, which lead to actions. This is that whole, you know, it starts with a thought. This is why it's so important that 2 Corinthians take your thoughts captive. This is why it's so important, you know, whatever's Philippians 4:8, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable. You think on those things. It's like this is so critical to have the right input. You think on those things, you get a different output. So it kind of goes back to our appreciative inquiry. Even if we can think on and see the good, kind of fits in. I haven't thought about it this way. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for this time of reflection.
Yes, connect them all.
So yeah, but we gotta, you know, there's the Proverbs in the old way was I believe it's King James. It might be a little different than this now, but how we might read it, but it's basically as a man thinks, so is he.
Yeah.
So it's this input leads to output. So what's that mean for dads? Well, what are you putting in? Because if you're putting these things in, frankly, if you're putting these TV shows, these movies, these thoughts, these things into your family, and not just you, but your family. I remember our kid, one of them was staying over at somebody else's house, and this weekend they asked us, is it okay? At least they asked us, can we see this movie? I said, I have no problem saying no. Because I know what input leads to, and images stay for a long time. And you're called to guide that. I mean, one of the things I've done plenty of things wrong. So you can ask my kids. I mean, my teenagers could tell you all things yesterday probably. But one thing I think we're doing right since COVID, I did mention this before, but it was really fun even this morning, is every single day since March something, we get up in the morning earlier. They got to go to school later these days, and we get up, and at 7:30 in the morning. We are putting some sort of positive input in, a video, usually. Yep, it's okay, reminder, every day. So Lisa and I get up at 6, and but at 7:30, we're all watching something this morning. We watched a fantastic Greg Rochelle piece. Actually, it was on thoughts, taking your thoughts captive.
Yeah.
But I decided I got to have my family have the right input if we want the right output as a family.
That's it.
So that's all kinds of things. And that can be good things like trips, like books. Like right now we're reading the Mark Batterson book. I think you're having him on. Back to the Circle Maker. We after certain dinner. Now we don't want to get legalistic about this. There's other things that happen. We got a dance recital. We got this or that. But we just finished. This is a good one for the for COVID. Is Hiding Place. It took us forever. Okay, we read, and then it was like 3 weeks later we read another chapter. But just what are the inputs? Not and your family. You talk a lot about it of you know, fun things together and that kind of thing. But those are all inputs, and everything is an input. So you just as much as you might want to put in one of your fun methods of working out together,
Sure.
you might have to get rid of something. And it's shocking to me what people allow in, and then they expect their family to be this, you know.
And being a curator does not take rocket science. Like, you're able to find these resources. They're free. They're all over YouTube, and great. Like, curating, you're not preparing a talk. You're not writing. Maybe you are once in a while. You're writing original content. No, it's not that hard. I think about a dashboard and how, you know, in a cockpit, a plane would have all this dashboard of like knowing, you want to know when things are going well when you're flying a plane, but also companies, I'm working on a dashboard for DadAwesome. It's like, these are the things that indicate that we're healthy as a ministry. We can reach more dads. We're
Totally.
growing. You're doing the same thing with leaders around so many areas. But when you think of a dashboard, what should we be measuring? You've already talked about many of those factors, but any just top of mind things as we just kind of brainstorm a dad dashboard of these are inputs that would, if measured, are going to lead to some great outputs.
Well, Bob Goff, yesterday, I was listening to his podcast, and he was talking about how quantity time builds quality time, right? He didn't say it like that, but that you have to have an amount of time. People say as a dad, well, I always, but it's quality. When I have it, I make sure it's quality time. Well, then is it? And by the way, are you dealing with the toughest issues then? Because quality can happen in the biggest crisis, right? So I think, I don't know what you said there, but that's an easy one to look at is some sort of quantity. And then I might get more direct and say, what kind of things are important? It's like, for us, that morning pouring in. I don't want other people pairing my kids. I said this before, but when I was traveling a lot, I sent a video every morning to my family for a certain time where they would watch that video at home, because I don't want other people parenting. I want me doing that even when I'm on the road. I want to put inputs in. So anyway,
That's a great example. And another one I'll share for you is a getaway weekend where it's actually focused extended time. And I had a chance just to learn a little bit about this from you offline, but this idea of becoming a man weekend, was it you and your wife together took your son on that? Or who was it?
Nope.
Just you?
In this case, what we do when they're a young lady of approaching 12 or 12,
Okay.
or a young man, and we have two of each.
Yeah.
So every other, and we're the symmetric family, right? Let me tell you, all four of those kids are very different. But basically, we get away, and it's pretty intentional. It's quite a lot of content, actually. So we like to add, even though it was kind of created for Friday through Sunday, we try to go Thursday to make it more fun and easier in a way. Very powerful time, but the dad takes the boys in our case, and the mom takes the girls, but there is a union with the other spouse at the end. So what happens is we go through Pathway to Purity. It's fantastic curriculum, and so that aligns with what we're about. You could add other things, and we add other thoughts or whatever. I still have one kid that still likes watching my video channel on YouTube, so he'll still watch me, right?
Yes,
So we might add some things, but basically we go through Pathway to Purity, everything about how these years that are coming up in middle school and high school and staying pure and just in certain ways, just how we want them and hope that they'll be, right? So so it's got a lot of audio, and thankfully we don't have to do it all. So we want to pick a place 4 hours away. With Isaiah, I took him on a flight and aligned it with a speaking event. But basically, we went up to Lutzen in my case, and Lisa took Vanessa to Lake Michigan or whatever. So we listened to all this content, and then there's a journal and different activities you do, and it's a really great time. Then we put something fun with it. And, in our case, we went skiing here. I think it was 9 below zero the morning we got up to go skiing the first time. But anyway, that weekend is intentional. And then we come back together, and on Sunday evening, we go out for a nice dinner, dressed up. Just not all the other kids, just mom and dad and the kid, the 12-year-old. And the girls get a special necklace, and the boys get a big Toledo steel sword.
A sword, really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Kind of a King Solomon sword is what it is. And so it's hanging on their walls, and they kind of make a pledge for their life, how they're gonna date, how they're gonna treat women, how they're gonna and how they're gonna live in other ways too, as young men and young women. And that's it's not, I don't have the outcomes yet. I mean, we got 12, 14, 16, 18, but I'll tell you, that 18-year-old and Vanessa, she's making some great decisions in her relationships and who she is. So we'll see what the outcome is as we go toward more,
And I can speak as a son who did not have that as a 12-year-old. I did not have that extended, a dad who was willing to go into a topic area that's maybe uncomfortable and then have some fun moments as well, adventure together. And then the special, it's a gift paired with a, like, we're honoring you by doing this meal, like the respect shown, the moment created, it's a never forgotten moment. So I know my girls, like, we're already talking intentionality around what 2nd through 5th grade, how do we bring some of those same elements, but different way. So I love that you can just share your version of what you just did in January here. And it's a big deal. It's a really
big deal. I'm going to miss it. That was the last one.
Yeah, that's right. You're 4th, your youngest. Well, we're going to land the plane with talking about DMAs, but before that, difference making actions for dads. But before that, I want to talk about your new book, Trusted Leader. So we're dropping this podcast on launch week for your book. And I mentioned this back 7 months ago when you were on, of like, we got to get you back on for the book launch because there's so many parallels. Again, trust, being a trusted leader on the home front. Why did you write the book, and why would it be applicable for a dad?
It's applicable to every, any leader. There's a parable at the first half that really shifts thinking about trust. This Ethan main character, and it's really cool journey, kind of from failure to success. And then the second half of the book is takeaways you can use tomorrow morning under each of the 8 pillars and the 8 pillars of trust framework. You can use tomorrow morning to build trust. That this. So why did we do it? Couple different things. One, we kept seeing people think, leaders even think, well, it doesn't trust something you either have or you don't, and it's absolutely something you can intentionally build and must. Number 2, we kept seeing that trust is the leading indicator in leadership. Everything else lags. What do I mean by that? In business, we talk about leading versus lagging indicators, and we always want to try what leads to more sales, so then with the lagging indicator would be more sales, right? So what leads to it? So, well, people say, I've got a leadership issue. You never do. The only reason you follow a leader or not is trust. So you increase trust, all of a sudden you become a leader, people follow. We got a sales issue, we never do. The only way to increase sales is increase trust. We got a learning issue. The only way to increase learning in a classroom is increase trust in the professor, the content, or the classroom. So we have to, when we deal with the trust metric or trust issue, we actually solve the real issue. And of course, in companies, we're solving for sales and attrition and retention and culture, but it's the same in dads. If we want to be more effective, we have to increase trust. If we want a voice in our kids' life, we have to increase trust with them. That's our, and by the way, if you don't build these pillars in your life to some degree, totally imperfectly, of course, sure, you're not going to trust yourself enough. And that's like the love your neighbors yourself. People that don't love themselves at all, how fun are they to be around? They don't have a healthy love of the good of themselves that God created them to be. And this is the same with trust. So there's several reasons there, but basically the other reason was we kept hearing our audience say, we love Trust Edge, 367 pages, Wall Street Journal bestseller, but I need something quicker, more shareable, more usable. I need to understand the concept and apply it tomorrow. And this is a shorter, just actionable, inspiring but actionable book that kind of furthers that original work from a decade ago or more.
Incredible. And we know that dad principles, wisdom, practices without trust are like putting Band-Aids on when there's a deeper issue. And as dads, we're just not going to, if we don't have the trust to back up what we're sharing, it's these little, like, I just feel like our ability to bring long-lasting impact to our kids is non-existent without being trustworthy, and again, not perfect, as you said. Yeah. So thank you for writing this book. We're going to make sure to send. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, if you would like it, we also did. This is created for the world that I'm in, trying to with countries and companies and pro sports teams and whatever. But we created because I had this passion about this module. Faith-based module on what God's been saying about trust. So if anybody's interested in that, email us. I don't know where that's held at this moment, but it's a really cool, really amazing piece. It is for pastors really around the world, that they get this extra module to show how as a trusted leader, how does this work, as a pastor. So,
oh man. And well, I know you guys created us a custom, and I don't actually have it on my notes in front of me, but it'll be in all the show notes, and I'll put it in the outro of this podcast, the /DadAwesome.
Yeah, exactly. Trustedleaderbook.com/DadAwesome.
Boom. So, and
Yeah.
we'll have it, we'll have a channel to that other resource you just mentioned. We'll get that posted there. So it's, again, we're recommending all of our listeners, let's grow in this area. And when you joined me for episode 138, I mean, we spent the whole thing on the topic of trust. Today's been a lot of other topics because I was just so curious to talk other dad topics, but we're going to reference back to that as well. Guys, go back and listen to episode 138 from 6 or 7 months ago. Let's land the plane though here. Difference making actions. As a leader, as a dad, there are some things that have bigger impact. And even if you've already mentioned it, can you just, any last thoughts on how dads could really be difference makers?
Well, there's lots of things I could say about that, but DMAs in our lexicon at Trust Edge Leadership Institute, and I've written on it several times in other books, but is what we see people do is get distracted, have to-do lists, they're overwhelmed, so they do nothing.
Right.
So everybody in our organization and other organizations we serve, they take out a sticky note every day. We want it non-electronic for a reason. Okay. And we've got all these things we could do and should do, but we take out and write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can't have more than 5. What are the difference-making actions today to drive our mission, to do what we're supposed to be called to do today? What are the most important things? And those DMAs have to be time sensitive. You have to have a time, because otherwise someone says, I'm going to do this big thing that I could never do. They'll never get to any others. Usually we want them to be, usually they're a minute or two. I mean, many of the most important things people do, like write an appreciation note, that would be super powerful. People won't do it. It takes 2 minutes, but make a call. You can't have a DMA be longer than 2 hours. That's max, but normally it's short. So I'm just, every day we're sitting in, before we start or the night before, a sticky note, even though we still have to-do lists and metrics and KPIs, we're thinking, what are my DMAs for today? And I would argue, and I have in one of my books, have a DMA list for home and a DMA list for work. What are the difference-making actions today? Because a lot of people do a lot of things that are not difference-making, at least in a positive way. Well, I'm going to watch that show with my kid. Really? What if you did this? What's a difference maker? What if, what I'm going to do, whatever it is, you got to get a difference maker, and that difference maker has to have a number attached. For 5 minutes, I'm going to do 20 these, 5 of those, 3 of those. That makes a DMA, and that that's
incredible. And this conversation's been filled with examples of DMAs that dads could write, put on their dashboard of their car. Hey, before you go inside, or for me, it'd be like on the laundry room door before I walk up a half flight of stairs to my girls. Like, so it's so practical. Any last words before I invite you to pray for us?
Oh man, I guess I could say all kinds of things. One thing that consistently comes to mind is consistency, which is the final pillar of the Trust Edge framework. And that is, and this is a dad or a leader, little things done consistently make the biggest difference, not the big things. You thought that trip to Disney World made all the difference? Unlikely. Little things done consistently make the biggest difference. Yeah. And by the way, I would vote for not going to Disney.
Yeah, skip that.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us today, David. This is so helpful. Would you say a short prayer for all the dads?
Absolutely. Oh, Heavenly Father, thank you. Thanks for this time. Pray that you'd use the words to encourage and maybe even inspire, and just grow us each in godliness and even our own manhood toward just being great dads that are trustworthy. And it's one thing to look trusted to best, but to actually be worthy of it. We know Proverbs 12:22, the Lord delights in the trustworthy. Pray that we would be more and more trustworthy dads. And thanks for this time. Thanks for this friend. Thanks for those listening. Pray your hand upon their marriages, their families, their kids, their lives, their work. And pray all these things in Jesus' name.
Thank you so much for joining us today for DadAwesome. This was episode 167, and the show notes, all of the action steps, the conversation links, the specific link to get free resources from the Trust Edge Institute, David Horsager, all things related to the themes around building trust and being leaders, being dads who are trustworthy, are going to be all linked at dadawesome.org/167. So you can get those resources there. Again, if you missed that first conversation, episode 138 with David Horsager, that's linked in the show notes as well. You can jump back, hear a little more of the backdrop that leads into today's conversation. But guys, thanks for listening today. Thanks also for checking out f4f.bike, F4F. sabbatical.bike to learn more about joining our Fathers for the Fatherless initiative. Man, this is such a big deal, rallying dads in 5 cities across the nation to ride their bikes 100 miles on behalf of kids without a dad. Our vision, our goal is to raise $1 million this year, and you heard it in the conversation. David Horsager is joining us in Minneapolis on August 28th. So that's kind of fun. F4F.bike to find out more information about that. Hey, let's go have an amazing week. This is Easter week, and I just am praying. In fact, I'm going to say a short prayer for you guys as you walk into Easter week with your kids. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, and thank you for the sacrifice of him dying for our sins, but not staying dead, rising again, and that we get to celebrate on Easter weekend that Jesus is alive. And I pray that there would be breakthrough conversations with our kids this week, this Easter weekend, around salvation and around them knowing and receiving this gift of Jesus so that they can be forever changed. So I pray that blessing over every dad listening. Thank you that we get to be dads. In Jesus' name, amen. Go out there, have an amazing Easter weekend. We'll see you guys next week for another episode of Dad Awesome.